Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of the APSIA Forum Advisor Workshop. My name is Carmen Mazzara, and I serve as Executive Director of the Association of Professional Schools of International Affairs. APSIA itself is the community of graduate schools worldwide that specialize in the teaching of international affairs, particularly with that deep professional focus. And we're so glad that for the last 8 years, we've been able to bring programming to students and young professionals and advisors like you who play that key role in inspiring generations of students to come into the international affairs space, especially those that have been historically excluded from this space. And we very much want to address that particular issue and seek to rectify all of those past histories of excluding folks who can contribute so much to the conversation. Program sessions like these are made possible by many wonderful people, particularly my colleagues on staff, Brittany Chor and Sydney Song, who've worked so hard to bring this work to you. I also want to thank the many different investors in the APSIA Forum, in particular, the Princeton University School of Public and International Affairs, the Robertson Foundation for Government, Texas A&M's Bush School, the University of Pittsburgh GISPIA, and the University of Southern California Master of Public Diplomacy program, as well as many other important investors and partners who make this kind of programming possible. We have some great students here today to talk to you about their own journeys into graduate school, and I absolutely invite all of you to use them as a great resource so you can draw on their wisdom as folks who've just been through a lot of this discernment process, so you can be of best service to the students whom you serve. We're going to be moderated by APSIA's wonderful graduate fellow, Sydney Song, and I'll turn the floor over to her. As we go through, if you have any technical issues, please let me or Brittany know. And I again invite you to put your questions in that chat so we can have a really robust and dynamic conversation. With that, Sydney, please, the floor is yours.
So hello everybody, my name is Sydney Song. Thank you so much, Carmen, for introducing me. Like she said, I'm currently an APSIA graduate fellow and also a graduate student at Texas A&M's Bush School of Government and Public Service. And today we're going to be talking about helping students navigate graduate school options. And I'm joined here today by 2 Robertson fellows and fellow graduate students, JaKyah and Eugene Parrish. And so I just want to kind of explain to y'all the format. So I am the moderator, and we will just be going back and forth, asking questions and just kind of having a conversation. And I do encourage y'all to turn on your cameras, but mute your mics, please. And if y'all have any questions, please go ahead and type them in the chat, and we'll see if we can get to them, or we'll be having kind of a little Q&A in that, later on. And so with that, I'm going to get started. And before I start, sorry, if y'all want to look at the speaker bios of Eugene or JaKyah, there is a program that will be sent out in the chat that y'all can look over. And so with that, I will get started. And so to start off, Eugene and JaKyah, what is your degree program focus, and kind of how did you decide that that was the right program and right school for you?
Hello. My I would say that I am the Masters of Public Policy program at UC San Diego. I chose this program because it had a number of factors that I loved. I'm from California, and it's by the beach. I always loved the beach, so I felt like that was a great location for me. But also, they offered a lot of skills that I wanted to get into, like learning R and doing like qualitative and quantitative analysis, things that I've been doing a lot in undergrad. So it's been really cool to learn more about it. They offer a lot of like alumni in DC that I had a lot of roots to when I was at VSU and Virginia State University. So I feel like I was able to always talk to them about my public career and like my aspirations, and they were able to like give me advice or help me along the way. So those why is why I chose the program.
Hi, I'm JaKyah. So I am a Master of Public Policy student at the University of Maryland. I kind of had a different way into picking my master's program. So my background's actually in fashion, and I took a job in Uganda helping this social enterprise that was doing a lot of women's empowerment work in the fashion industry. And I got really interested in how I could combine my background in that with something more global. So I focus now on international development. It was really important for me to find a school that had a lot of economics courses tied into the program and just something that could give me a more global perspective. So I focused on international development and environmental policy.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think coming into this field, it's always so interesting hearing like how everyone kind of chose their school and the major that they're in. And so, how does this align with the professional goals y'all like hope to have a future career in, or that you're currently doing right now?
So I grew up in the Central Valley of Stockton, California, and we have a lot of like environmental issues and just like policy issues that I've noticed growing up my entire life. So things that affected me and my family and my community. So that's kind of why that drove into me at a very young age. But I didn't know what to do about that in my career. And I felt like advocating for others and policy were like the right intersections for me to get involved with. So I feel like when I was an undergrad, I was like, what do I want to do after I graduate? I still want to advocate for others, but also work in policy. And I feel like in this program, it was the right fit to like explore these intersections for me.
And I'm sorry, Sydney, could you please repeat the question? There was a large plane driving by, flying by.
No, you're completely fine. I was saying, how does your degree or like the program that you're in right now align with your professional goals, or like what future career you want to go into?
Awesome. So my goals now are to get into foreign service. I'd love to work in diplomacy. So this program directly aligns with that just through the things that we're learning. My capstone right now is with Department of Defense. So just, navigating, learning how to navigate the government in general is kind of just like a whoa, right? So having the support from UMD has been really helpful in just like figuring out where I want to be and how I can combine my skills, since I am coming not from a political science background or anything like that. So it's been really fun for me kind of finding different intersections of like how I can help women and global issues and just finding my space in it. But the university has been very helpful.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then kind of going back to y'all's, like when you were applying to graduate school, what do you think are some skills that really helped you when doing your applications or that you feel are really important to when students are going into graduate schools? And kind of what skills do you think your program has allowed you to improve on?
Oh, sorry. Do you want to go, Eugene?
Go ahead, go ahead.
Thank you. So for me, the skills that have been able to work on, I guess, a lot of what Eugene was saying, like the data quantitative skills. So I learned how to use R, which I don't know, some people don't like it. I think it's really interesting, but just using different statistical software to kind of navigate economic issues and things, I found that to be really interesting. I think going into grad school, I was kind of intimidated. I didn't know what skills I needed to have to go. I'm the first person in my family to go to college, let alone grad school. So it was kind of just like, well, I'm going to go to Peace Corps and decide if I really want to, jump into graduate school. But I think just being determined and having a passion were probably two things that helped me with my graduate school applications. But I'm not sure. Maybe Eugene has a different answer.
I would have to agree with JaKyah. I'm also a first gen, so I didn't think that grad school was like, it wasn't my first goal. So I was very like having a hard time navigating the space of applying. I didn't think I had the skills. But my undergrad professors assured me that like you have everything that it takes. So like just go and apply. Um, and I feel like also I got into like a lot of quant skills that I was not really well versed in before, and it was very foreign to me, I would say. Um, and at first it was a very like hard thing to learn, but like I really do like learning like regressions and like quantitative analysis and like how things are related to each other. I feel like also people don't like it, but I find it really interesting also, and I want to learn more about it. So I think like things like that, learning more Excel Those are like really big skills that I've been learning since I've been in grad school this far.
Yeah, I took a quant class last semester and I absolutely did not like it. So hearing y'all both have such positive experience with art makes me happy because like I think all of us were just dreading it in my class, or at least in my program. And so I know both of y'all said that y'all were first gen students. And so what is a big piece of advice that y'all could give to students who are in similar positions as you? And what kind of like guiding force do you think was what really pushed y'all to apply? Was there like an advisor, a class that really stood out to you that made the difference?
So for me, I think it was I don't remember who it was, sorry to that person, but someone told me when I was initially applying, I was looking at all the requirements from different schools and looking at GPAs and GPA requirements and getting discouraged. And then someone told me, like, you are much more than your GPA. You're much more dynamic than that. You have so many other skills and things that you've done in your career so far. So just to like not focus so hard on some of the requirements and applying anyway. And I think that was kind of it for me.
I would say for me, it took a lot of like getting out of my own head and like me being like against my worst critic. I had I had multiple mentors in undergrad who like were really there for me and like really showed me like this is achievable, this is possible. And like if I needed them for support, they gave me support. Um, I feel like when I was looking at grad schools and seeing like the requirements and like the costs and like the application fees, I was like, this is a lot. And I was also graduating that semester, so like this was a lot going on. I wouldn't have got there without my like advisors and my mentors.
Yeah, for sure. I know that I had amazing undergrad advisors that have helped me be here and just like mentors in general. And so, how long did it take y'all to kind of complete your graduate school applications? Do you think was the most important part? I know for me, it was like my statement of purpose that took me the longest. And so kind of what was that process for y'all? How did you manage to find like funding for the application fees? Because I know it can be expensive.
So I applied to graduate school in 2020, so during COVID. So I had the benefit of the stimulus check, which helped me pay for application fees. Um, but yeah, so that's when I applied. But I would say that, sorry, I lost my train of thought. What was I forgot the question. I'm so sorry.
No, you're completely fine. Kind of what do you think was the most
I got
like the hardest part of completing your application? How long did it take you? Just
you.
like any advice that you could give someone that's going through the process or wanting to start the process.
Sure. So yeah, I applied in 2020. It took me about 2 months in total, 2 to 3 months, because I ended up making a spreadsheet with different schools and the costs associated with them. And yeah, I think for me, the personal statement was really important. I was able to like look into the faculty at my university and see professors who had research that I was interested in, and I kind of incorporated that into my statement of purpose. That was really helpful for me, I think.
I applied for grad school fall semester of 2022, and it didn't really take that long. I would say like I had already chosen my schools that I was applying for. I think the longest thing was the statement, but I got a lot of help from like just professors who like were overlooking it, were proofreading, editing, like fixing my errors. So I think once that was like the biggest hurdle for me and getting my references, I think it was very simple. It took me like a matter of weeks. I applied for a number of programs, so like I would say like it took me like all semester to get all that finished. But it wasn't too bad. It was honestly really easy than I expected, honestly. It wasn't like hard to navigate. It's very simple, very straightforward. Just have to have everything with you when you were applying. And I
Yeah,
don't know if there was another aspect of the question I was missing.
oh no, you're fine. I was gonna ask like
Okay.
an extension to the question, but yeah, I know this grad school applications, it was like once you like sat down and actually did them, I think that was the easiest part, but it was like dreadful. The whole idea of it was dreadful. But what is like the best advice that you received during that time? And what advice would you give your past self while you were doing those applications?
One piece of advice that I received was to reach out to I know it sounds like counterintuitive, but to reach out to the universities and talk to the admissions team about just like what you're interested in, talk about the program. I think just getting as much information as possible. One, helps the school know you. So I think when I was applying for scholarships, they're like, oh, JaKyah is always sending us emails. Like, she's obviously really interested in this program. One, and then two, it just made me feel like I'm sending an application into people, not like into a dark space. So I think just meeting the team that's going to be reviewing your applications, or just meeting people who work at the graduate schools that you're interested in, I think that's really helpful.
I would say attend information sessions when schools host them. That really helped me like craft my personal statement, further my interest in the program, ask the questions. I feel like that was a big thing for me because I was also like in Virginia, like very secluded place. So I couldn't like go to the school and like ask questions in person. So I think information sessions were a big thing. And I would give that advice to like students who are like looking at grad programs.
Yeah, for sure. And not to plug APSIA, but we do have like different events on our page that y'all can check out or like send out to your students as well. And so like I think a big thing is like how you decide to like what the reason why you decide to pursue grad school. And so why would a student choose to do that, or why did y'all choose to do that? And kind of how do you think advisors should frame it or advertise it to their students? Any like resources, advice that you could give to them?
Could you ask that one more time, please?
Oh, you're completely fine. And so I think a really big thing is like when students decide to pursue grad school, it's not like an easy thing to do. So why would a student pursue grad school like you all? Like, why did you choose this path? And how do you think advisors can frame it or like help advertise grad school to a student that's maybe interested, or they see something kind of in them that would want to do it? What are just some resources or advice that you could give to these advisors that we have here?
Well, I know for me, I think my experiences, lived experiences, I thought that like after undergrad, everything was like supposed to begin for me. Like I would get the career I wanted, the life I wanted, but that was not the situation at all. Um, I feel like I didn't really I wanted to learn more of the skills that I learned in undergrad, build upon the skills that I learned. I knew there was more to learn. And I'm someone who loves to learn. Like I'm just like a lifelong learner. Like I just love to learn. So I'm like, I just want to learn more about what I can do to help my community. And I feel like grad school was that option for me. Um, and I think that could be a good place for folks who just don't know what to do maybe after undergrad is. I feel like a lot of folks think that like after undergrad ends, it's like life is like begins for you. But I feel like sometimes you can go to graduate school or PhD and like you can learn a lot more to apply yourself to like the things you want to do after school ends.
I agree with Eugene's point of graduating undergrad and feeling like the world is supposed to be delivered to you now that you have your degree. And it's like, no, it's not how it works out all of the time. So I think for me, I took 2 years off, or 2 to 3 years off between my undergrad and going to grad school. So for me, it was more so um, kind of realize, like, my 2 to 3 years of professional experience made me realize things that I wanted to know more about and wanted to specialize in. So going to grad school was kind of a way to, I guess, reshape my educational background to meet my new passions. So that's kind of why I decided to go.
Yeah, it's amazing. And then something that I think is really important to talk about is like how expensive grad school is. I know like when I first applied, I was like, I didn't really know the cost. I mean, we're like right when you sit down to do the applications, it's like, oh, application fee. And so kind of how like what opportunities have y'all found to pay for your graduate school? And are y'all like working, or like how do y'all like balance your work life with your school life, and just like, yeah, like making it more affordable for students, or just kind of what do you wish an advisor had told you about paying for it?
I think it's kind of like the reverse side of this. Like, I think something that I didn't realize was that there were so many opportunities to have your graduate school paid for. I think I thought, like, oh, it's going to be so expensive. I have to pay for it right now. I'm doing a fellowship with Robertson Foundation, so they're paying for my college, my tuition. But besides Robertson, there are lots of other opportunities to find funding. And I think that I didn't necessarily have all of the resources to do that. I had to really work hard to find it. And I think that can be discouraging because it is very expensive. And like we all, well, not all of us, but I do for sure have debt from undergrad already. So like I didn't want to accumulate more. So the cost was definitely very important to me when finding a school. But
Yeah, I have to concur with JaKyah. I was worried about the cost of grad school because I did not really have enough money for undergrad. I'm for being frank. But I think I was honored to also get the Robertson, so they're paying for my tuition. So I think that removed a huge barrier for me when coming to grad school. They provide a stipend per month, so I don't have to like really work if I don't want to. And that has also been like a big barrier removed off of me because I could just focus on my studies and like my career and my personal development. And I think that has been honestly a privilege, I would say, because not everyone in my program has that privilege. So I'm thankful for that. But there are also other ways I was looking to like you can fund your education. I would just say you have to like really do look for because they're out there. They are out there, but you have to like really look for it if you're not being told about these resources.
Yeah, for sure. I know Carmen just sent in the chat the APSIA fellowship and scholarship page that we have, and it just kind of has an overview of different opportunities for your students. And I know that even then, like there's grants that you can apply to and different scholarships just within your own school. And so those are all great resources. And I know both of y'all mentioned being Robertson Fellows. And so what are some extracurricular activities that y'all participate in like in your school or outside of your school, or some activities that are available at both of y'all's institutions?
I would say for me, I am also a primary board member of the Black Graduate and Professional Student Association on campus. So that has been one of my first positions to get involved in my community in San Diego. Um, and I think that was like a best decision for me because like I've been able to like really indulge myself into like the Black graduate community and find my community coming from an HBCU. That has been like really helpful for me to like find community. There are plenty opportunities that that my program offers for students. Um, but for now, it's my first year, so I just like not doing too much more than I can do. So I'm just for now, I am I'm just a board member right now.
for me, the University of Maryland has affinity groups within the School of Public Policy. They're not very well developed. So I think I went to like one of the Black students in public policy events, and there were like two of us. So that hasn't necessarily been the best. I did join the environmental club, which is cool. We have meetings once a week. We do different activities around the city. Yeah, I think there probably could be more activities and things at my school personally, but
No, yeah, coming in from undergrad into grad school, it was like a huge difference of like the activities and like the organizations that you're in, because it's like y'all are all so much older. So like I think we take a step back from that. But there's still so many opportunities, I think, to make community, at least here at the Bush School there is. And so kind of shifting gears, what role are you hoping that your graduate school will play in your professional success or in the career that you hope to pursue?
I'm hoping that my grad program can provide me not just the tools, but like help me with the transition from graduate school to finding a career. I feel like they've been doing that pretty well so far, so I've really been grateful for that. But just finding what my interests are and knowing that that can also change as like my education changes. Um, but they have been very supportive on me, even in my first year, like, what do you want to do after you graduate? Like they're very much on it the day when you get in here. We have like a whole career services team at my grad program, and like they're like instrumental. Like I've never had a school that like really like had a career services team that were like really like hands-on with like students. So that's been also another thing that I've been utilizing a lot. They offer a lot of personal development courses, a lot of like job training, interview training. Like they offer so much, and I've been really been like taking advantage of that.
I agree. I think just working with my university's career services has been really helpful. I'm graduating in May, so I've been, thank you. I've been, brain face like plugged into usajobs.gov, just kind of like down that rabbit hole. But I definitely have utilized a lot of support from my career services. They, like Eugene said, host a lot of events that have been really helpful. They invite employers, and just using the resources available have been pretty helpful in my job search thus far.
Yeah, I think the Career Center is so amazing. Although we don't have like student-run organizations, having these like advisors that are there for us and just like invite these employers is such an amazing opportunity for you to kind of get a diverse perspective of what you could do within the IA field. And so my next kind of question for y'all is, how did you choose your school? I know I came to Texas A&M for undergrad, and so I just kind of transitioned into their grad school program, and so it was an easy shift for me. But if you like had to move states, or if you had to move like you're from your home state, how did you choose that?
Um, like I said before, I made a spreadsheet of my top 3 schools, and I kind of just based that off of just the programs themselves. Like I really wanted to get more of a background in international development and economics. So I just looked into schools that had really great programs with that. Also, because I was a returned Peace Corps volunteer, they have a Coverdell Fellowship, so I took that into consideration when I was applying. I didn't apply to any school where I didn't apply for half or full funding. So that for me was really important. And then I ultimately decided to pick UMD because it was between 3. They were all great programs, but I got the Robertson Fellowship. So having college paid for kind of trumped the other universities. So that's how I decided.
Pretty similar. I had to choose from like 7 programs, and that was really, really challenging. But overall, I think getting the Robertson kind of trumped everything. Getting school paid for was like a big hurdle of a lead, but also I got to go back to California, back to my home state. So I'm close to family, I'm close to like my friends again. So it's been like some pluses to all that. So I think it was really easy to choose that because it had like a lot of my personal interests, and a lot of my career interests into one. So I think I like hit the jackpot, I would say.
Yeah, that's amazing for both of you. And having the Robertson Fellowship is just, I think, amazing that both of y'all have it and have that opportunity. And so going back to kind of the courses that you're taking right now, I know sometimes like sitting in like your international theory course or, like these like beginner courses, it can be kind of dreadful or it can be a little bit boring. But how do you think these courses are going to help shape you into becoming the future servant that you want to be, or kind of shape kind of like your like what you decide to do in the end?
I think with anything, it's important to build the foundation. And again, because I was coming from a different path altogether, some of the introductory courses were nice for me because I'm like, oh, okay, I can kind of catch up with everyone else in this way and, learn something new. And like Eugene said, learning is always great. Obviously, grad students say that, but yeah, so I think, it's rough. I mean, there were some courses that were pretty boring, but, you need them. And I ended up learning things from them ultimately. And I refer to them still. So I think they're all helpful. Just remembering your goal is important.
Here in my program, we have like core courses, so most of them are like not the funnest to be in, but they're like good for like building like that foundation for our second year. So although they may not be as interesting to me at times, I found some of them interesting. Um, but also on the quarter system, so like it goes by kind of fast. So if you don't like a class, it goes by in 10 weeks, you're done. But I also like no matter what class it is, I always like appreciated like what I've learned and the professors that taught like the lessons, even though like I may not like enjoy the class as much, I feel like what I've learned, I could take the other classes and build upon that.
Yeah, for sure. I know once you kind of get done with your core classes, you kind of get to choose like the classes you're interested in and kind of choose the professors. And I think that's when it starts to get really fun personally. And I know both of y'all are at different locations, and me being in Texas, kind of how does the location of your school impact like your graduate school experience and the opportunities you get? I know being in Texas or not being in kind of like the DMV area kind of like limits me a little bit, but I'm able to find my own opportunities within that. And so kind of how does your location shape what you're doing and kind of your whole graduate school experience?
Yeah, I think being in the DMV is a privilege, right? So I've been able to do internships at Commerce and other places while at school, just because it's close. So I think that's been really helpful. Um, yeah, DC always has lots of just networking events and opportunities. So I think I've just been kind of lucky with that.
Although I'm not in the DMV area anymore, back in California, I feel like they do a good job mimicking like if I'm in DC because they have a lot of like networking events. They have alumni come back to campus to talk to us and to connect with. Um, they encourage us to like talk to alumni who are in DC, like do like um meetings with them and get to know them. So I feel like they do a good job of like indulging us in like community abroad, but also the community and locally in San Diego and California. We have like opportunities with like San Diego's local government, California's local government. So that's been like get the best of both worlds, I would say. But yeah.
Yeah, I know. I think when I was first like, oh, I'm not going to be in DC, I was heartbroken. But then you realize just how many opportunities are like at your own school or just like in your own county, and within your own state. And so I do have kind of a little last question for y'all. I appreciate you kind of dealing with my scatterbrainness and just kind of I've been all over the place, but and it's final season for us. So I appreciate y'all just staying on top of it with me. And so kind of my last question for you all from me is kind of what is your biggest piece of advice for someone going through the process or even just wanting to go through the graduate school program, like application process? So like what is your best advice to a student?
I would say just, I don't know if this is helpful or not, but just apply anyway. Like let go of the fear and apply anyway because you never know what will happen. And 9 times out of 10, it'll be something positive. Whether it's you didn't get into that school and you got into another one and it was supposed to work out that way or whatever it is, I would say just apply anyway and utilize the resources that are available at your school and your advisors.
I had a lot of imposter syndrome when I was applying for grad school. So I will give the same advice that was given to me. Um, go where you are appreciated. Um, being marginalized does not mean that you don't have the skills. That it means you have additional skills, like you have an additional perspective that folks do not have. Um, and that has been very helpful for me and not feeling like I don't have what it takes to be in grad school because I didn't think I had that before. But now that I'm here, ending my final quarter, well, not final quarter, but final quarter of my first year, I'm grateful that I am here because I learned so much and I was able to apply what I learned in undergrad in graduate school. And I was able to offer insights that sometimes nobody else knew. So I think that like just knowing that you have what it takes, no matter like what your head is telling you, what folks tell you, what your community tells you, like if you have that goal to do it, then I would say just apply and do it. You never know what will happen.
Yeah, thank y'all both so much. I know that imposter syndrome is like every time I've talked to somebody within APSIA or like a fellow, like an alumni or a fellow student, they always talk about that. And especially with being students of color, it can kind of be a little challenging to get over that. But I appreciate y'all talking to me about this. And I'm gonna see if there's any questions in the chat or if Carmen wants to take over from here.
Sydney, there's a couple questions that folks sent to me, but you are in charge of the show, darling, so I'll just share them as we have time. One is actually for all three of you. I know, Sydney, you mentioned that you went straight through. JaKyah mentioned that you took time off and did Peace Corps. One question we all often get from students is whether they should go straight through, take time in between, or how long. Based on each of your experiences, would you recommend students follow your path or do something different? And Sydney, I'm going to pick on you first.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so I did my undergrad in 3 years and then I just went straight over. I definitely don't regret it because I think if I would have taken a break, I would have not had the same momentum to keep going. Um, I do feel like it was very quick, and sometimes I do feel that burnout because I went through my undergrad so quickly. So I don't know if I necessarily tell people to do the same thing as me, but I do think I've had a great experience with it so far, and I wouldn't change it if I had to go back.
For me, I would say I appreciate having the 2 years before going into graduate school just because it allowed me to kind of, come back into myself, decide what I want, like reform, reshape, and then I didn't necessarily feel burnt out because I had a little bit of a break. I felt like excited to jump in and learn something new. And I think I've been able to contribute differently in course conversations than students who came straight through. So I would recommend taking time between undergrad and grad school just to, recenter and to have things to add that are different than other students based on experiences that you may have had during those 2 years.
I also went straight into grad school after undergrad, and I feel like sometimes I probably should take a little small break between because I've been in school consecutively since probably like kindergarten, I would say. So I haven't never really got that break from like being in education, but I feel like I do get that burnout sometimes. But I feel like knowing how to manage the burnout is also important.
Thank you all. JaKyah, one other question we got specifically for you was you talked about pivoting in from the fashion space. That's also a question that a lot of folks have. Could you talk about how that experience has been for you with such a distinct major and then coming into IR and public affairs?
Sure. So for me, I was interested in sustainable fashion. And so, since the industry is global, there's a lot of perspectives from the industry that relate to women in developing countries finding employment, often work in the fashion industry. So, there was a little bit of overlap there. And I think when I moved to Uganda and I was able to work with women in a fashion company that was making products that were sold in the US and Canada, just being there and seeing the different things that they were dealing with. I was in a war torn area. Like, I think the war just ended 10 years prior. So there was just a lot of things happening, and I didn't know. Sorry, there's something. I didn't know how to, understand what was happening or how I could help or how I could be a part of changing this. So I decided to go into grad school in international development so that I could, one, understand, and two, find my place in helping and developing and building. I think it was a little bit difficult when I first got there and everyone just knew so much about, like, I don't know, policy and the government. And I'm just like, wow, okay, this is different. I felt like Elle when I don't know the name of the movie right now, but the blonde girl who goes to law school. And everyone's like, what's happening? So I think that gave me a little bit of imposter syndrome in the beginning. But as Eugene said, I think that's just a part of growing, is realizing like it's okay to feel like an imposter as long as you keep pushing through it until, fake it till you make it. So that's kind of been my experience with that.
I love that. And one thing I always try to remind students too is all of those connections, no matter what you're studying. Folks may not think studying fashion has a global and international affairs element to it, but I think you just shared so clearly how those two things work together. Again, folks, you feel free to put questions in the chat, send them directly to me or directly to Sydney. Sydney, do you have any? I have a couple more folks sent directly to me, but did anybody send any to you?
I don't have any, but if I would love to hear what they sent you.
Sure. So one of the other questions I got was also, about the process of USA jobs and how that's been for each of you who's navigated that space, both as a student as well as someone seeking to be a professional. And JaKyah, since you mentioned it, I'm going to start with you again.
Okay, sure. So I hate USA Jobs. I think it's the worst website ever. It's really like you just send it and you maybe will never hear back. And then 2 years later, they'll be like, you didn't get this. And I'm like, what is it? So that in and of itself is just very intimidating. I think my career advisors have been able to like kind of walk us through resume building for USA Jobs, how to like pull out those keywords. And I have been obviously referred to a lot more jobs in interviewing. But I think initially it's very intimidating because the interface is very just like, here's the job, here's the description, do it exactly like this, or you won't even look at it. So I think just utilizing the services at my university have been really helpful in navigating that space. And I have had luck getting internships and things through there. So it does work, I guess, but it's definitely intimidating for sure.
Sydney, Eugene, maybe you've had slightly more luck.
I've been using USA Jobs since undergrad, and it's like well known within like this like entity that we don't like USA Jobs. It's very like hard to like you just don't hear back sometimes, and like what did I do wrong? Like what can I improve on? You just don't hear anything back at times. Like you just like you're like throwing a dart and hoping that it like hits the target sometimes. But it has worked for me. I have had like internships through USA Jobs. So there is luck. There is it's not terrible. Once like I think once you learn USA Jobs for what it is, you can excel at it.
Yeah, I think I also USA Jobs is not my friend. And I know there's like different ways to like set up notifications to get like for certain like internships and certain jobs, and that has been extremely helpful. Like once you figure out how to do that, that's really helpful. And I think it was JaKyah that mentioned like just going to your career centers and like making sure your resume is at the correct format, because since it is you're applying to a government job, they want everything very specific and in a very um kind of a format that doesn't seem very fun or very like attractive to anyone to look at except for them. And it does feel like you are just sending in like an application into like an abyss. But once you kind of get that, like one, like, oh, like here's an interview back, it feels extremely rewarding. And so just kind of learning how to navigate USA Jobs at first can be hard, but once you get the hang of it, I think that's where you really start to excel in it.
And Anne gives great advice in the chat too about reaching out directly to agencies and going to their specific recruiting events and building relationships, much as with the grad school component. I'm also personally curious, Eugene, you mentioned your family and being closer to family and how your family might have responded when you told them you were going to go back to graduate school for a degree program like the one at UCSD GPS. And for each of you, I am curious, what did your family say when you shared this with them? And you didn't say, I'm going to be a dentist or a teacher or a chemical engineer, or jobs that a lot of people encounter in the course of their everyday lives. And how did you navigate that particular relationship? And Sydney, you're on my screen, so I'm curious to start with you.
Yeah, of course. I think going into the IA field, well, to be honest, I never really knew what I wanted to go into. I started off pre-law with my undergrad, and I think that's the same story for a lot of people who go into international studies or international affairs. It's like you think you're going to be a lawyer. And then I quickly realized that I was going to finish up my undergrad very quickly. And so I was like, well, what can I do to kind of extend my time here? Because I was still 20 years old. I had really no experience at all. And so I was like, okay, well, graduate school looks like a really good option. And, being a daughter of immigrants, they weren't the most like, oh, like you're going international affairs, like that's great. They're like, well, what are you going to do? Like, what is this? And I think now, even my mom, when I call her, she's like, so like, have you applied to like law school yet? Have you taken, And I'm like, no, mom, like that's not what's gonna happen. But I think although they weren't understanding at first, when I started getting internships, when I started getting or working with APSIA, they finally understood what I was doing and just kind of showing them that the work I am doing is leading to like a bigger cause. And although going into international affairs kind of feels like you're going into like it can lead to so many different opportunities, but I think that's the like best part about it is that you can go into so many different fields and excel within that. And so although my parents weren't the most supportive, I think now they're starting to understand it and starting to see that I am making a difference in my own way.
I mentioned that I was a first gen before, so I feel like my family is just really happy that I'm going to school because they're like, "Well, you got a bachelor's. We're so proud of you. Like, you're getting a master's. We're so proud of you." Like, I don't think they kind of understand what I'm doing just quite yet. I think like they're like, "Oh, you want to be president?" I'm like, "That is not what I want to be," but that's what they think. They hear public service and like, "Oh, president." I'm like, "No, there's a lot more to public service than just being president." So I feel like they're really proud of me. They're really happy that I'm like close by. I moved like an hour from them. So I'm like, they're really happy that I'm here. They're really supportive of me. They're always asking me questions, even if they don't understand what I'm saying. They're like, "Oh, we're so proud of you." So I'm like, having that support from family, it means a lot for me. I was really far from them when I was in Virginia. So like having them close by again has been like really helpful for like just me, my motivation, um, getting like a little break from school. Sometimes I go see my family. So like that's been just really such a big thing for me since moving out here.
And I'll kind of just echo what everyone else has already said. Um, yeah, I think my family, they were like, wait, what? How does this relate to fashion? Do you still want to do fashion? Are you still interested in this? What are you doing? And I think it's just like, especially as like a Black American, there are not a lot of Black people in international affairs. So a lot of my family don't know anyone who do that. I learned Swahili and they were like, why? Like, why are you learning this language? So I just, yeah, I think there's definitely like a lack of understanding of what exactly I'm doing, but I do have a lot of support from them. And I think once I started, like Eugene said, or I don't know if it was Eugene or Sydney, but once I started getting internships, they were able to like actually see it as like, oh, this is a career path. This is what she's doing. This is the types of jobs that she may be interested in the future. But yeah, they don't know what's going on.
That's as Sydney said, the joy and the sorrow of having such an enormous space with so many possibilities. And to our advisors, as much as we can help you help students tell that story about those possibilities, we have lots of tools and resources, videos with alumni, all sorts of ways that you can help students articulate their interests and the intersections and the problems they want to solve and all of the challenges they want to be a part of contributing to fixing. So we hope to make that lift a little easier for you so that unlike our panelists, my family still doesn't know what I do, and I've been at this a lot longer than the three of you. So we have about 10 minutes left, friends. Are there any other questions that advisors get from students that you'd love to hear the perspective of our speakers on? And Anne's right, you all are such a wonderful inspiration. All right, I'm not seeing any more in the chat. Sydney, are you seeing any that were sent to you?
I am not, but if y'all have any questions, please ask them now. Oh, we have a raised hand, so.
I just want to thank the panelists for sharing their stories, especially being first generation. Even if you're older, I've been investigating some doctoral programs, and I felt afraid of applying, actually, to be honest. And thank you for being candid and sharing your experience, because you have inspired me, and I'm going to follow through and will complete the application. So I appreciate you sharing. Thank you so much.
No, thank you so much for hopping on. And yeah, I think it's just getting that initial, like sending in that application is the hardest part. But once you do it, you feel so accomplished. But is there any other questions or any other comments anybody wants to make? And feel free to raise your hand or just kind of turn on your mic. Or if you were to.
Well, I did hear, I did share about AmeriCorps because it's local, but could you share a little bit about your experience with Peace Corps. You did share a little bit, but like the application process, what did that look like?
Sure. The application process is really long. I think from like applying to swearing in as a volunteer, or yeah, would probably say anywhere between 6 to like 8 months. It was a really long process. So at the beginning, you fill out your application, you might hear back if you're referred, and then you do interviews. The Peace Corps website does a really great job of breaking down all of the different like steps to it, but I would say if a student was interested in applying, they should just reach out to a local recruiter. That's what I did. And that helped me a lot with the application. They were able to like read through some of my, like I think statement of purpose and things like that and give me advice that I could use. But yeah, that helps.
I just wanted to applaud both of them for your courage, for your steadfastness. I mean, and for your representation of African Americans, people of color. I too served as a Peace Corps volunteer. I was also a first generation, almost everything. And to see you in this present day intense, and representing the diversity of America is very rich. Not only did I serve as a Peace Corps volunteer, but also a Peace Corps country director in Cameroon, Uganda, and South Africa. And we are always looking for, diversity. And so to say that you have gone that space, to say that you have considered that space, to say that you have also pursuing a master's degree is awesome. And so I've actually reached out to you on LinkedIn. In my capacity, I've run the Office of International Affairs at North Carolina Central University in Durham. I'd love to be able to stay in contact with you to see if there will be future opportunities either to use this as a recording or to invite you in a virtual space to speak to and inspire some of our students as you are inspiring us right now. So thank you.
I love that you were a Peace Corps volunteer. That's amazing to hear, and
Yeah.
thank you.
Do we have any last questions? I know we have about 5 minutes left, but any final questions or comments? And if y'all are too afraid to ask, turn on your mic. I know I have a little bit of Zoom fear. So if y'all have that, y'all can type it in the chat or send it directly to me, and we would love to answer them for you. Okay, and so now we're going to kind of wrap things up. And so I'm going to pass it over to Carmen to talk about a little poll that y'all are going to be filling out before y'all leave. And so, yeah, thank y'all so much for joining us. And thank you so much to JaKyah and Eugene. Y'all have been amazing speakers and just great inspirations for all of us.
Well, thank you, Sydney, as well, for moderating such a great conversation. And I invite all of our advisors to please fill out this very brief evaluation poll and let us know how we did. These sessions continue to evolve. This is our 8th year of running these kinds of workshops, and they grow and they change and hopefully get better because of the feedback that you give us. So I really invite you to share your opinions with us. I also want to thank our 3 wonderful speakers, our 2 speakers and our moderator. I know that particularly as graduate students, it can be difficult to stand up and share your story and give advice and put yourselves forward. And so I'm grateful to all 3 of you. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure our advisors have as well. Advisors, please do plan to join us later on today, where we're going to really be talking about how those global issues can live on the local level, and to build on some of what Eugene said, how people can access different opportunities no matter where they live, Texas, California, Alaska, Hawaii, DC, all of those places have rich ways to get engaged in global issues. And then tomorrow, we're going to have a session on how hopefully APSIA can make your lives as advisors a little easier. The tools, the resources, the videos, the ways that we can help you bring these stories to your students. At our session yesterday, our panelists talked about how one of the biggest barriers they faced was just awareness that this space existed. And once they found it, they realized how much of it resonated with their own goals. And so we hope to make it a little easier for you to bring this to your students so you can inspire all of them to hopefully join us in the many possibilities within IR. Thanks to all of you for voting. Again, we'll leave it open for just another quick minute. But please do plan to join us. And if you'd like to revisit any of the wonderful wisdom that's been shared on this video, we will have it up for you on the APSIA YouTube page just as soon as we can. Thanks to all of you again. Thank you to our wonderful speakers. Thank you to the Diversity Forum investors. And we'll see you at the next Diversity Forum Advisor Workshop coming up. And we can stop the recording.